week, I don't know, maybe we were in the house for 5 years, and it was still there. And one of the old pastor's wives came to visit. It wasn't Mrs. Sugden, it might have been,
No, oh, I don't.
but it was somebody that had been there before. And I said,
Well, that's what.
and she looked at that and she said, "Oh, I remember when I put this in." "Oh, you're the one who put this in." The poor lady. I didn't say any more after that. That's the end of my story.
I was very young and very stupid about some things, but we wanted to get a new piano. I think it was a church business meeting, and I made a comment, an offhanded comment that we needed to replace Tin Lizzie, the piano. And afterwards, our neighbor, who was a very, very nice man, came up and not angrily at all, just kind of calmly said to me, that piano we gave in memory of my mother. So I learned, I hope I learned a little bit of a lesson about being a little bit more careful about what I said, and especially when I didn't know things.
I also taught piano lessons, a lot of piano lessons there. I remember one of the most memorable of my students was Monica, who now owns and runs the Pilgrim House in Lansing. It was her grandfather's. And she used to come in and she'd do flips, cartwheels, all the way across. It was a big living room, all the way across the living room, and she'd land at the piano bench. She'd be ready to go. She is also a horsewoman there, and I still see her. I see a bunch of my piano students from there on Facebook, not in real life. Just living in image, not substance. That's the way my life is.
So it is July 22nd of 2022, 7/22/22. I'm sitting here with my mother, Gloria Jean Lampiris Rudd, and we've been taping little decade oral history videos. The goal is to spend no more than 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and 7 minutes is fine on the entire decade. And so we are at your 20s now, the years from 20 to 30. And you did talk in the last one quite a bit about your wedding. I don't know if you remember that. So we kind of have your wedding down.
Okay,
So tell us anything that you want to, but we're looking for the big picture of where you lived, what you were doing, what high points, what surprises, new characters, old characters, themes. Go ahead.
well, we did get married our junior year. And then I did my student teaching our senior year, and then the last semester was really fluff for me. And I guess it was fluff, but I became pregnant. So 2 days before our graduation, I lost twins in a miscarriage. And I never did practice for the graduation, so they just pushed me from one place to the other. And then we went back to the Sioux, where I became the worker, the runner of my parents' motel. And Bill worked in the Sioux on some construction job, I think that year. And then we had to decide where to go to seminary. And we lived in 3 houses. And we ended up going to Winona Lake, and he became a youth pastor. And we went to this church just to check it out as a youth pastor. And we said, we're not going to say our name at all because we want to see them before they see us. So we said, and the pastor shook our hands, and we said, we're Bill and Gloria. He didn't say our name. They said, what? What was that last name? Anyway, we ended up for 3 years there, working with kids, and while he was in seminary, driving back and forth. We stayed at people's houses, which what he said was good, I said was the best thing we ever did, because we learned how other people lived, why their children acted the way they did, why their teenagers acted the way they did. And then we had you, and then God called us in a strange way to the little town of Perry, Michigan, where Bill became the main pastor. There were about 100 people in the church at the time. And we were in that building, in that church, for almost 10 years. We had 3 children there, so that was our decade. That can't be true. Yeah, that's not right, because we went there when we were he was 25 years old. So just after I had David, I was 24. No, I had you when I was 24. So you were a year old, and then I had David at 27 and Daniel at 30. And so that was a lot, all about raising children, sending you off to kindergarten, where you came and told me all the kids are running on top of the tables and screaming. Your teacher was our friend across the street. So that was probably the reason we started a school, because we thought this place is crazy. Now, it might not have been as crazy as we were told, but we did start a school with K through 12. It was an unusual school. And if you weren't a motivated student, you did not do well because you did things on your own. It was called ACE, Accelerated Christian
Education.
And you got to a point where you got way ahead of everything, and then you just got out and said, but I don't want to do any more of this, especially in certain areas. Then when you were, I think you were 12.
11.
I think 11, almost, yeah, you were 11. We moved to another place. That's out of a, because I was 35.
That's the next decade,
You
right?
had a lot of you taught 3-year-olds. You played the piano.
What I did. Well, actually, I didn't say this. When we were in seminary, I taught in public school for a year. I taught 3rd grade for half the semester and 4th grade for the other half semester, which I said it was very hard for me to teach in a public school, that I could not mention the name of God. It wasn't like that in Indiana. I could say anything I wanted to, and they were happy about that. And I had some darling, wonderful children in that school. It was so fun. And then I had some complications having you, so I was in bed for a while. And that happened to all 3 sons, complications. But those years are kind of a blur. A lot of people to take care of. The church grew from 100 to 600. We built maybe a 600 seat, big, beautiful auditorium in a town of about 1,200 people. So it was pretty all-encompassing. Our kids ran wild and had lots of fun in the church and in the neighborhood with a lot of friends. And then
We lived next door most of it.
when we were there for about 8 years, somebody had to build or get a different house because we had 3 pastors on staff. And we lived in the parsonage for 8 years, which I loved. It was fun. It was right next to the building. Some people would hate that, but I liked it because then Bill wasn't pushing me out the door on Sunday morning. I could get there whenever I wanted. And he wasn't having a fit, because his idea of being on time is to be an hour early. So then about 8 years in, we decided to build a house, which we did. And Daniel was a little boy. You two were both in school, David and Andy. And Daniel was home with me, and he helped me. We stained all the wood in the house, he and I. I painted all the rooms in the house. I would not be able to do that right now. So we lived in that house probably only about 2 years. And that was sad. So, and during all that time, we were living far away from our family. So our children did not have grandparents right there. And I think of my own children who, all except you, have had the benefit of having that kind of help, which is pretty awesome. But God always provided some old little people to love us and take care of our kids, and some of them might have been a little weird. I'm not sure.
Who are you talking about?
Mrs. I won't say her name.
Okay.
I mean, she was just a strange little lady. She was happy to do it, come. And I don't even remember who else took care of you. Lois took care of you a lot of times. So she was about 15 or 16 years old.
Joanne and Beth Hornbeck.
Beth Hornbeck?
And Joanne Hornbeck, both
And
babysitters.
Joanne both
Yeah,
did?
yeah.
Joanne's not that much older than you, is she?
She's 2 years older than me, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's our 30s.
Are there people looking back who became your friends that have stayed your friends during the rest of your life?
Yeah, probably
or-
the Emersons and the Crosses that we worked with. Crosses we worked with. When you were good friends with their three, they had 3 girls. And the Spaldings, I mean, you knew the Spaldings well.
There were a lot of young couples coming up in the church. We married a ton of people. And we're friends with many of them on Facebook now.
And a lot of them are dead.
Would you say that there were things about you that changed during your 20s?
Oh, yes. I
And
thought I
what-
knew
and-
everything.
In what ways? Okay.
Don't all 20-year-olds think they know everything?
Yes.
I was teaching parenting classes, and I'm thinking that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. It was, I mean, Anita, our youth pastor's wife, and I we would have 100 ladies in this small town come in, and I don't know what we called it, something, tea time or something. And they would come in, and we would have one section of the time together was just jabbering, and the other section was I gave a thing on parenting children when I knew nothing, and she gave a Bible study, and we kept it up for a long time. People loved to come, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, what did I tell them?
Even though it wasn't a small church for long, it was a small town church. And in many ways, the church building was a hub of activity. And so you and your friends had the run of the church, and an awful lot of life at that stage was built around the church and its activities. There wasn't the same degree of alternative things
No,
going on.
we were 20 miles away from a big city.
Yeah. But I think of things like at Teen Ranch. The church had that little camp.
There were not all the big organized sports teams and that kind of stuff going on.
No.
I mean, there probably were some in big cities, but not like it is now. At all. What else?
We had a fun milkman who would
Davis.
bring the milk. I mean, come right into the house before we were even up.
He didn't charge us for a lot of it.
And he'd put all the stuff in the refrigerator.
And at Christmas time, he'd give us all the most delicious things that you ever wanted.
It's a very loving congregation.
The best story of God's just unimaginable, miraculous was when I got a telephone call from the local, what is it?
General store.
It was like, yes, and they had furniture in there. And the guy said, there was a man in here, and he gave you such and such amount of money to buy some new furniture in your living room. And I thought, I almost dropped the phone, almost died, because we had this very ugly couch that we had bought when we had been married for 5 years. Before that, we always lived in furnished apartments. So we bought a couch and a dresser and something else, but they weren't real great furniture, and this especially was really ugly.
We didn't have very much money at that
But
stage
I
of
went,
life.
so we went down to the place and we said, okay, we'll choose something, and I chose, which was one of my stupidest things, a white couch. I had 3 sons, a white couch. And then there was a chair that matched it, but I looked at that and the price was too much, and I said, oh, you can't do that, we don't know whose money this is, we're spending. So we bought a smaller, it was a rocking chair, which I really had wanted a rocking chair. So we got it home and we enjoyed it all winter long, and then it came summertime and there were sidewalk sales down at this little store, and Bill and I had walked down there, and I said, oh, Bill, that's the chair that matches our couch, and they only want $100 for it. We need to get that. And he's looking at me like, oh, you're crazy. If you come up with $100, okay, we'll come and get it. And I said, I'm just gonna pray and we'll see who's going to get it. And the next morning, the truck from that store backed up to our porch in the parsonage next to the church. And this guy had the chair on his head, and he walked up to the door and he said, here, and Bill looked, he said, did you go and buy that chair? I said, no, I have no idea how this chair got here. And the guy just said, same man, which was impossible.
I don't know if he even said the same man.
I
He
don't,
said
I,
somebody.
somebody did this. And so we assumed it was somebody in the church. And we thought it was the milkman for sure, because he was probably one of the most generous of all the people. And it wasn't him. But we found out later it was a high school dear friend of ours who had a big company in Elkhart, Indiana, and he would go through there all the time. And actually, Bill
He'd stop to see us in Perry.
yeah, and Bill had done some counseling actually with he and his wife, and they stayed in our house, and they saw that furniture, and so he never wanted anybody to know it, but he told my mother, and she said, well, I know who that was. She was probably sworn to secrecy, and she told me. But to me, it was quite a miracle, especially the second time through, that he even knew anything about that. It was a great faith experience.
We moved into the parsonage, which was right next door to the church, which was really nice in many ways, but also meant that there was a lot of intrusiveness too, because we were too accessible, but it was very nice.
We didn't feel that way
But
at all.
when we came, the previous pastor had lived in the parsonage, and I don't think we knew this, but their kids went to bed every night in their winter clothes.
No,
because
in
the
their
upstairs,
coats.
in their winter coats, because the upstairs was so drafty and cold. Well, between pastors, after they'd called us, I think a group of the deacons or trustees were walking through the parsonage to see if there was anything they needed to do.
No, I told them some things first.
And then one of them was a young man.
And his
trustee.
father-in-law was a head.
His father-in-law
Deacon
was
or whatever.
was a nice man, but he
He
wasn't going
was
to spend
really
money on
tight.
it. So Eldon went through the upstairs with his hammer,
A sledgehammer.
and he
And
just
broke all the walls.
punching holes
So
in the
they
walls
had to
everywhere.
do it.
So they were forced to fix it, and of course they'd insulate when they did that.
Wow.
I've been thankful to
I've never
Eldon.
heard that story.
Eldon Silver.
Well, the previous pastor too was extremely loved by the people, and all I could hear was Susan. Susan is so wonderful. She's just, and I'm thinking, and now they've got me. I thought, oh, what am I going to do here? But once I met Susan, I knew she was just a real person, just like me, and it wasn't intimidating.
And they
anymore.
really loved you.
Yeah, they were very kind anyway. I don't know if they loved me or not. We cried all the way out of that city.
In
when we
many
left.
ways, it was just a very warm it was a good place for us to raise our family in many ways, not in some other ways, but in many ways it was.
Well, the wife of that deacon that didn't really want to do anything in the house said when she went in there, Susan had put burlap up all over the playroom. Do you remember the playroom? And she said, "Oh, can you imagine doing this?" And I'm thinking, well, I like it. It was real cool. It was the 70s. And I'm thinking, if that woman talks about that lady like that, I know what she's going to say, so I'm going to watch out for her. Actually, Andy, she was very nice to you. You used to go to her house, Mrs. McCormick, Ella, and she would read books and give you books, and she was very kind. But of course, we all have goofy things about us, don't we? Yeah. The other thing in that house was David getting locked in the bathroom, and there was a keyhole there that I think you had to use that to get. I don't know how he did it, but we're looking. All you can see is this big brown eye looking there. How are we gonna get him out? How did we get him out? I don't know, but he is
Maybe
out.
he's still there.
He is out.
But remember, there was a time too when because we just walked across the sidewalk to the church, when we all got home and realized that you weren't with us, and we went back and you were standing inside
Another
the side door,
big brown eyes looking at us with horror out the door.
Probably one of those early traumas in your life.
No crash bars then.
No.
And in the kitchen, they had this most ugly melamine all over the walls. I hated it from the first time I saw it. And
It
then
was marlite that you would use in a bathroom.
it was awful looking.
Yeah.
It was turquoise. I
remember.
hated it.
My friend Jeff has that and turning us off.
Well,